Imagine having the power to change how people act. Not, by forcing them, but just by sort of rearranging the furniture.
Exactly.
That invisible power, that soft influence is what we're doing a deep dive on today. We're looking at the science of choice architecture.
And it's this fundamental idea that every single environment where you make a decision, whether it's a website or a cafeteria line, it's designed...
Intentionally or not.
Right. It's pushing you one way or another. And that brings us to the core concept of the nudge. The big takeaway here from all the research is that there's really no such thing as a neutral choice.
Design is destiny, you could almost say.
Or at least a very powerful influence.
Okay, so let's make this real. There's a perfect, simple example. Let's talk about Carolyn. She's a real person, a choice architect, who runs food services for a huge city school system.
Hundreds of thousands of kids' meals every single day. And, she wasn't some behavioral economist.
No.
But she figured out pretty quickly how powerful simple arrangement could be.
So what did she do?
She just rearranged the food displays. Sometimes she'd put desserts first, sometimes last. Or she'd put the healthier options, like carrot sticks, right at the front of the line, at eye level.
And the effect was significant.
Oh, it was huge. When we say that, we mean consumption of those items could shift by as much as 25%, up or down.
And just to be clear, she wasn't banning junk food.
No.
Or making anything more expensive. She was just guiding attention. She was giving them a nudge.
Which is a perfect lead-in to our core definitions. First, the choice architect.
Right. So that's anyone who organizes the context where people make choices.
Carolyn is one, obviously. But so is the person who designs your retirement plan options or, a web designer who decides where to put the buy now button.
Even a doctor explaining your treatment options is a choice architect.
Exactly. And then there's the nudge itself.
How do we define that precisely?
A nudge is basically any little feature of that architecture that predictably changes your behavior, but, and this is the key part, without forbidding any options or changing the economic incentives in a big way.
So putting the fruit at eye level, that's a nudge.
That's a nudge, but banning all the soda from the school.
Definitely not a nudge. That's a mandate.
Exactly. And the whole philosophy behind this is called libertarian paternalism.
Which, I have to say, sounds like a complete contradiction.
It does. It's a deliberate paradox. The libertarian part is the most important. It means your freedom to choose is always preserved. You can always ignore the nudge. You can always opt out.
Okay, so you're still free. What's the paternalism part?
That's just the idea that since we have to design the system one way or another, we might as well try to design it to make people's lives, longer, healthier, better.
But better as judged by them.
As judged by themselves, yes. It's a gentle steer based on the fact that design is unavoidable, so it might as well be helpful.
So, okay, why do we even need this help in the first place? I mean, why aren't we all just perfectly rational decision makers?
Well, because the world of traditional economics is populated by these mythical creatures we call econs.
Right. Homo economicus.
Yes. An econ is someone who thinks with the cold logic of a supercomputer, has the memory of an archive, and the willpower of a meditating monk. They never make a biased decision.
And then there's us, the rest of us. We're humans, Homo sapiens.
And the central finding of this whole field is that we humans, we make predictable mistakes. We err. And the reason for that is deep in how our brains process information.
To the two systems.
Exactly. Psychologists talk about the automatic system, or system 1, and the reflective system, which is system 2.
The automatic system is, well, it's automatic. It's fast, instinctive, your gut reaction. It's kind of the Homer Simpson inside all of us.
Right. And the reflective system is the opposite. It's slow, deliberate, self-aware. It takes effort. That's your inner Mr. Spock. And our automatic system is brilliant most of the time. It lets us drive a car or catch a ball.
But it can be fooled.
It can be systematically fooled, even when we consciously know better.
Okay, let's talk about truth. The source material brings up a great example, that famous visual illusion of the two tabletops.
Yes. When you look at the image, you see two tables. One looks long and narrow. The other looks, much wider.
And your brain, your automatic system, just screams that they're different shapes.
It absolutely insists on it.
Right.
Even when you're told they're identical, even if you get a ruler and measure them yourself, you still see them as different. You were confident you were right, but your gut was wrong.
So it proves that these systematic errors are just part of being human.
Exactly. So if our eyes can be tricked that easily by something we can see, what happens to our brains when we're dealing with abstract things, like money or risk?
This is where we get into heuristics, these mental shortcuts that lead to biases.
Let's start with anchoring and adjustment. The idea is we start with a number we know, an anchor, and then we adjust from it, but usually not enough.
There was a fascinating demonstration of this.
A really clever one. Researchers asked people to guess the year Attila the Hun sacked Europe. Now, most people have no idea.
I have no idea.
Right. But before they guessed, they were subtly anchored by the last 3 digits of their own phone number.
Wait, their phone number? That's completely irrelevant. It has nothing to do with ancient history.
Absolutely nothing. But the automatic system is lazy. It just grabs the number that's right there. And what happened was people with high phone number anchors guessed dates that were hundreds of years later than people with low anchors.
That is just wild. It shows how easily our judgment can be swayed.
It really is. Okay, next up is availability.
This is the one where we judge risks based on how easily we can think of an example.
Precisely. If something is vivid and recent, we think it's much more likely to happen. It's why sales of earthquake insurance skyrocket right after an earthquake happens.
But then they trail off as the memory fades.
Even though the actual risk hasn't changed at all, the memory is just less available.
And this leads us to something that makes us terrible at long-term planning, especially with money. Loss aversion.
Yeah, this is a big one. The research shows that losing something makes us about twice as miserable as gaining that same thing makes us happy.
So we hate losing $100 way, way more than we enjoy finding $100.
And this is the basis for what's called the endowment effect.
The coffee mug experiment.
The famous coffee mug experiment. You give a group of students a coffee mug. Suddenly to them, that mug is special. It's theirs.
And if you ask them to sell it, they demand way more money for it than other students who don't have one are willing to pay.
The perceived value instantly doubles just because it's something you currently hold.
And this all feeds into what might be the biggest driver of inaction of all, the status quo bias.
It's just inertia. We have this incredibly strong tendency to just stick with whatever the default option is. Changing requires effort, and it opens up the risk of loss.
I think everyone listening can feel this. You stick with the terrible factory settings on your new TV for months because changing them just feels like a chore.
We see it everywhere. One study found that half of college professors made 0 changes to their retirement investments over their entire careers.
Or people who get married and years later, their mother is still listed as their retirement beneficiary.
They just never got around to changing the form they filled out when they were 22. The power of the default is just immense.
And understanding these biases, these internal conflicts, it really shows why we have such a hard time with self-control.
It takes us right back to that dual system idea, which we can think of as a planner versus a doer inside each of us.
Okay, let's talk about the cashews. This is a great story for explaining what they call dynamic inconsistency.
Right. The economist Richard Thaler is having guests over for dinner, and he puts out a big bowl of cashews.
And he realizes that everyone, including himself, is just going to mindlessly eat them all and ruin their appetite for the actual meal.
So he takes the bowl away, and his guests thank him.
Which, to a purely rational econ, makes absolutely no sense. Why would you be happy to have an option taken away?
Because it's a conflict. The long-term rational planner in them wanted to save room for dinner. But the short-term impulsive doer who was in a hot state was about to sabotage that plan.
So taking the temptation away helped their planner win. They were happy for the help.
So if we want to help the planner, we can use choice architecture to build commitment devices.
Like the alarm clock that runs away from you.
Exactly, the clocky alarm clock. It literally runs off your nightstand and hides somewhere in your room, beeping.
So your sleepy doer, who just wants to hit snooze, is forced to get out of bed and hunt for it.
By the time you find it, you've engaged your reflective system. You're awake. The choice architect built the solution right into the design.
But a lot of the time, it isn't even about temptation. Sometimes we make bad choices just because we're not paying attention.
Which brings us to the stale popcorn experiment.
This one is amazing.
They gave moviegoers these massive buckets of popcorn. And the popcorn was intentionally terrible. It was days old.
People actually said it was like eating styrofoam packing peanuts.
And yet, the people with the giant buckets still ate 53% more than people with a medium-sized bucket. It was just mindless eating, driven entirely by the size of the container.
The bucket itself was the nudge.
Yeah. And beyond our own internal psychology, we're also massively influenced by social nudges. We're herd animals.
We look to other people for information and for peer pressure.
The power of conformity is just staggering. You can see it in those old Ash experiments on judging line lengths.
Right, where people are in a group and they're asked to say which of 3 lines matches a sample line. It's an easy task.
It's obvious. But most of the people in the group are actors, and they start deliberately giving the wrong answer.
And what happens to the actual test subject?
More than a third of the time, they just go along with the group's obviously wrong answer. They defy the evidence of their own eyes just to avoid standing out.
But social norms can also be a force for good.
Absolutely. The sources point to the Don't Mess with Texas anti-littering campaign.
That was hugely successful.
Because it didn't just say, don't litter. It tapped into local identity, social norms, making littering seem like something a true Texan would never do. It's a powerful way to change behavior.
This reliance on cues extends to just the physical world around us, too.
Yes, to something called stimulus-response compatibility. Think about a poorly designed door, the kind with a big handle that just makes you want to pull it.
But it's a push door. So you pull, and it doesn't open, and you feel stupid.
Exactly. The visual cue, the handle signals pull, but the door's function is push. The design fights how your brain automatically wants to respond.
But you can use that for good, like the safety stripes they painted on that dangerous S-curve on a road in Chicago.
That's a brilliant example of feedback design. As you drive into the curve, the white stripes painted on the road get closer and closer together.
Which creates the illusion that you're speeding up.
And that illusion, that false sensation, makes your automatic system want to tap the brakes. It gently nudges you to slow down right before you hit the most dangerous part of the curve. It's beautiful choice architecture.
So if we pull all this together, we can see where we need these nudges the most.
Right. Humans really struggle with decisions that are difficult, decisions we don't make very often, and ones where the feedback is delayed.
And the effects are a long way off.
That's the trifecta. Things like saving for retirement or picking a health insurance plan. This is where high-stakes choice architecture is desperately needed.
So let's talk about saving. The status quo bias, or doer's impatience, it all works against us.
Which led to the creation of Save More Tomorrow, or SMART. It might be the most famous and successful nudge ever created.
How does it work?
Simple. You ask employees to commit now, when their planner is in charge, to increasing their savings rate in the future, specifically every time they get a pay raise.
Ah, so it neutralizes loss aversion.
Yeah.
Your take-home pay never actually goes down.
You never feel the pain. The extra savings just come out of your raise.
And the results were pretty staggering.
Monumental. In one program, 78% of people who were offered the plan joined it. And after just 3 raises, their average savings rate almost quadrupled. It went from 3.5% to 13.6%.
That's a life-changing amount of money over a career, all from a small tweak to the default.
You see a similar life and death impact with organ donation.
This is all about the default again, isn't it?
It's all about the default. In countries with explicit consent like the US, the default is no. You are not a donor unless you go out of your way to opt in.
And the rate is somewhere around 42%.
Right. But in countries with presumed consent, the default is yes. Everyone is automatically a donor unless they take the time and effort to opt out.
And the donation rates there are dramatically higher.
Dramatically, sometimes double. It just shows the incredible power of inertia. You can leverage that for enormous public good.
So really, building good choice architecture boils down to a few key principles.
You can actually sum it up with the acronym NDGES. Incentives, understand mappings, defaults, which we've seen are huge, give feedback, expect error, and structure complex choices.
It's a framework for thinking about how to build systems that help humans, not econs.
That's the goal.
What we've really explored today is that these nudges, they are everywhere. They're unavoidable. And then this idea of libertarian paternalism is a real practical way to improve people's lives while still protecting their freedom to choose.
And this whole conversation, it raises a really profound final question. If design can help our better selves, our planner, win out when it comes to things like money or health, what about our behavior toward other people?
Our sources leave us with this provocative thought, something called the civility check.
Imagine if your email or your social media had software built in that could detect when you've written a message in anger.
And a little pop-up appears and says something like, warning, this seems angry. We won't send this for 24 hours unless you confirm.
It could even make you do some annoying little task like solve a math problem to bypass the delay.
So the question for you to think about is, if technology can be designed to help our rational planner defeat our angry, impulsive doer, should we embrace that? Should we design nudges to make us not just smarter, but nicer?
What other parts of your daily life, your arguments, your relationships, what could benefit from a mandatory 24-hour delay switch? That's something to reflect on.